Hello, everyone. Josh Daniels here, lead PLFIF. But yeah, we'll dive right in. I know we're short on time. So next slide, please. So basically, you're going to cover a few topics here, kind of give you a sense on what Pro-PGF is, kind of where it came from, and sort of how it's developed, especially coming out of sort of all the work Onkar, Tom, and team have been doing around Retro PGF and sort of the goals around it. The launching of it, which was launched about a month and a half ago at ETH Denver, and is actively now accepting applications, which we'll talk a bit about. And then we'll talk about sort of what this sort of prototype phase looks like going forward. Next slide. So just a quick refresher on sort of public goods funding. So we won't go into too deeply because I know this group has a pretty good sense as part of this track. But the idea here is that as we think about blockchains and sort of the development of open source ecosystems, there's core infrastructure tooling, sort of teams, development work that needs to happen to really maintain and really scale these communities and ecosystems, and identifying and developing mechanisms and ways to support those public goods via sort of on-chain rewards or sort of other type of on-chain mechanisms is really critical. And so one of the things as part of the Filecoin ecosystems and PLFIF is we really want to bootstrap that effort as part of the development and sort of scaling and maturing of the ecosystem. Next slide. So we'll give kind of a really quick quick TLDR on sort of how this kind of PGF model developed. Next slide. So first you can kind of see here we had sort of the sort of overall kind of ecosystem as it relates to sort of Filecoin and sort of where things sit in terms of on-chain between FF and PL. Next slide. As part of sort of PL sort of maturing and developing, one of the things that came out of that was the creation of sort of the Blue Fund and what ultimately became known as PLFIF. That then sort of bred off to really sort of produce some other fund-to-fund plays in terms of trying to identify other teams that have deep sort of discrete understanding and knowledge of how to deploy capital and sort of tokens to other projects in support of the ecosystem. And so that was one of sort of the initial developments there. Next slide. As things continue to expand, we realized that sort of that in and of itself and sort of relying upon PLFIF as sort of a kind of subject matter expertise to deploy is not really ideal. We need to create mechanisms that can really be more community and on-chain driven to really support the ecosystem. And so that was the birth of Retro PGF, as Ankar talked about a bit earlier in the track. And so we've had a lot of really great success around sort of the first two rounds, working on the third round, and sort of, PLFIF will be supporting that as things expand there. Next slide. So then as we look at sort of how this expands, we're really thinking about, okay, what does it look like now to have a more proactive on-chain mechanisms? And so a way by which we can actually support projects that are developing and building net new things that ultimately are really interesting for the ecosystem in terms of sort of new tooling, new products, core infrastructure, and making sure that they're getting funding in a way that supports sort of long-term development to really figure out what works, what doesn't, and really get to 0 to 1 in a more constructive way. And so there's some of these open problem sets that we're solving as part of the development of this, which ultimately will lead to a more of a kind of merging from an entity perspective, Retro and Pro-PGF, in terms of how exactly we think about running that overall as an on-chain mechanism. But really sort of at this point, we're really kind of ideating and developing. So that's why we're very much in the prototyping phase. Next slide. And so now we'll talk more specifically about Filecoin Pro-PGF itself. We are currently open applications. Applications are open, rather. They're closing May 5th. You can look at this QR code here to apply. We've actually received, I think, close to 24 applications in the last time I looked, which was pretty exciting. Again, this is sort of the first batch, so we're not sort of being super public about it, but we obviously have been putting out some blog posts and some tweets around it and keeping folks engaged. But the program is live and definitely look to apply now. Next slide, please. As you kind of look at the goals of the program itself, they're really around sort of increasing the number of sustainable projects in the ecosystem. And so that really starts from thinking about projects at the earliest stage of development. How are we identifying great teams with clear strategies and visions, and ultimately sort of strong plans and approaches for how to develop? We're also looking at sort of how this program complements Retro PGF to ensure that we're making this sort of a holistic public goods funding solution. And then obviously gleaning learnings from various other ecosystems, as well as sort of the work that's been done on chain in the Filecoin ecosystem to date, and then developing the tooling stack out of that. Next slide. These are some of the requirements that we had kind of coming from talking with folks in the ecosystem and sort of better understanding sort of dynamics around that. And so again, community involvement, open call. So basically having a batch model to make sure that folks are able to engage. Right now we are in batch 1, on-chain voting and engagement, public visibility of applications, visibility on the budget. So just so you all know, there's an $8 million budget for fiscal year 2025, which will be split over 2 batches. Batch 1 is now live. Batch 2 will be live a bit later this year. And we're looking to fund projects for terms roughly 6 to 12 months budget cycles. We're expecting roughly an average grant size of $250K in terms of USD. That will be paid out in a mix of FIL and USD FC. And then also, we'll also be looking at a hard cap of $500,000 in terms of the grant size as well. And all of these details are available when you go to the site if you're looking at the application. Next slide. Again, so the features we've learned from sort of the Retro PGF. So we've developed a selection committee, which I'll talk a little bit more about. We'll actually be announcing the specific names this week for that committee, which will be really exciting. As I said, we're introducing a 2-batch model and really looking for this to focus on public goods. And we'll have sort of public visibility of the application process via Snapshot, which is live now, and integrated with Questbook, which is our sort of let's call it management system for the grants program itself. And as I said, the commitment is $8 million for this current round and 2 batches. So next slide, please. So quickly, we'll go over sort of the launch schedule for for Pro-PGF. That's a typo there. So if we go to the next timeline, next slide, please. So we've currently been seeding the vision now since 2024. We opened applications formally towards the end of March. The application deadline is going to be next Monday, the 5th. And then the selection committee will be reviewing through the 15th. And then voting decisions will be made towards the end of May, with early distributions starting in early June. And so this is a schedule we've been holding to. We've had some sort of shifts in that because of technical issues, but ultimately I think this will be the schedule as we move forward. Next slide, please. So then looking at sort of what do we think about the prototype phase. So if you can move to the next slide. Next slide, please. So the structure. So basically, we'll have a few elements here. We have support staff. So we've identified a few folks that are both helping out and also more formally engaged with us in terms of supporting the project as we sort of boot it, which is very exciting. We have 2 rounds that we're going to have, again, 2 batches. One is currently going on now. The second batch will be taking place a bit later this year around the fall. For funding, PLFIF will be the full funder for this prototype phase, which again is these first 2 batches. And so that'll be sort of $8 million in total, split across those 2 batches. The primary tools we're going to be using will be Questbook, again, which is sort of an on-chain grant management system that's used by a bunch of other major players in the space from a protocol perspective. Snapshot, which is one of the more prominent on-chain voting and on-chain sort of governance tooling systems. And then Synapse, which is one of the KYC tools that we'll be using as well. Selection committee, we've identified 10 folks, which again, we'll be announcing this week, who are both from the Filecoin as well as broader Web3 ecosystem, who have experience with grants and grant reviewing. And so it'll be a nice diverse, both on a sort of skill set perspective, but also in terms of just a broader Web3 experience. And then project submissions, obviously really keen to have folks apply and engage, which we've been getting some good uptick there. Next slide. So for the selection committee, just to kind of give a little bit more sense there, really focus on folks who have strong domain expertise in areas that matter as it relates to the Filecoin ecosystem in terms of SPs, on-ramps, understanding sort of core development, Also thinking about sort of tooling or sort of other needs within the ecosystem as we scale. DeFi also being an area where we want to focus as well. So spending time on that. Next slide. This is the review process. So we have sort of basically 4 stages. There's an initial screening stage that will happen right after the applications close. Then we have the selection committee initial review, which will take place shortly thereafter. Includes a 4-point rubric, which again was available for visibility both on the website and also on Snapshot. And then selection committee group reviews will take place as well after that. We'll have 2 to 3 members sort of review these projects as part of it. And then final decisions will come based upon sort of the sort of reviews and the scores that we've received. And there will be deliberations that take place asynchronously and synchronously with the selection committee to decide on those select projects that receive funding. As you can see right now, all of the proposals are live on Snapshot. You can go to this QR code or click on the link here if the slides are distributed. And then you can see sort of which projects are applying. You can actually go and offer your feedback on them. You can upvote them, downvote them. All of that will be informed in sort of the process as it relates to sort of the overall selection committees choosing projects to vote on or to sort of select for funding. And so that will definitely be a part of the second phase of the review process, which is when the initial reviews will be taking place by the selection committee. Just next slide, please. Next, just reviewing the launch timeline again. We will be going through this, sort of the application deadline is this upcoming Monday. So please get your applications in. If you haven't, reach out to me directly or on Pro-PGF, #Pro-PGF on the Filecoin Slack with any questions. And then the selection committee review will start thereafter. Last slide. Yeah, again, applications are open. If there's any questions, feel free to ping me. But hopefully that's helpful color and background on the program and the process. And again, we're in the prototyping phase, so any feedback and views on sort of things that should change or questions, please bring them directly and we'll happily address them.